Today, we're going to crack the code on a system that is, well, quietly changing everything about how scientists study the human brain. It's called Bids, and it's all about bringing some serious order to some serious chaos.
Okay, let's start with something we can all relate to. Have you ever opened a shared drive from a coworker or maybe your friend and just been hit with a wall of total nonsense? You know, files with completely bizarre random names? It's a universal headache, right?
Well, now I want you to imagine that exact problem, but multiply it by thousands of different labs, millions of dollars of scanning equipment, and just petabytes upon petabytes of brain data. For years, neuroscience was kind of stuck in this digital mess, but they came up with an absolutely brilliant solution, and honestly, it's a lesson for pretty much any field of science. To really get why this was so important, we have to travel back in time a little bit to see just how messy things were. People call it the data Wild West, and that is not an exaggeration. Just take a look at this. On the left, you've got Lab A. They name their files one way. Maybe it makes perfect sense to them. But then, over on the right, you've got Lab B, and they have a completely different system. Alone, you can figure them out, but together, they're totally incompatible. Any software you build for Lab A's data would just completely break the second it saw data from Lab B. In this chaos, it wasn't just annoying. It had really serious consequences for science. You couldn't just share data between labs. And if you can't share the data, you can't easily check someone else's findings to see if they're legit. And automation? Forget about it. Every single dataset was a manual, painstaking job. Scientific progress was just crawling along.
But out of all that chaos came a new standard. It was this really elegant solution that brought order to the whole field. And this was the start of what people now call the Bids revolution.
So, what in the world is Bids? At its core, it's actually incredibly simple. Bids, which stands for the Brain Imaging Data Structure, isn't some new software or file type. It's just a set of rules, a common language for how everyone agrees to name their files and organize their folders. That's it. And probably the best way to understand the sheer impact of this simple idea comes from this quote. It compares Bids to the Industrial Revolution. And that analogy, it is spot on. See, before Bids, every dataset was like a handmade artisanal project. Each one was unique, which sounds nice, but it was incredibly slow, full of human error, and just impossible to scale up. After Bids, data became industrial. It was standardized, it was machine-readable, and all of a sudden you could automate your analysis on a massive scale, making research way faster and a whole lot more reliable. Okay, so that's the big picture, but how does it actually work in practice? What does a Bids-compliant dataset really look like? Let's break down its anatomy. The first big idea is a super simple, totally predictable folder structure. Every project has one main folder. Inside that, there's a folder for each subject, sub-01, sub-02, and so on. And then inside each of those subject folders, you have these standardized directories for the type of scan, like Annotat for anatomical, or Func for functional scans. Anyone can look at it and instantly know what's going on. The second big idea is in the file names themselves. They're not just random names anymore. They're built using a strict grammar of key-value pairs. Think of it this way. Underscores separate the different pieces of information, like the subject and the task. Then, hyphens connect a key to its value, like task is the key and rest is the value. This beautiful structure means that both you and a computer can understand exactly what's in that file just by reading its name. But wait, what about all the other critical info that comes off the scanner? You know, the really technical details. That's where this clever thing called the JSON sidecar comes in. For every single brain scan file, there's a matching little text file with a .json ending. You can think of it like a digital ID card for the scan, storing all of that essential metadata in a way that both humans and computers can easily read, so nothing important ever gets lost. All right, so this system is pretty brilliant, but it does bring up a pretty practical question. How in the world do you get your raw, messy data from the scanner into this perfectly organized Bids format? You don't do it by hand, do you? No, of course not. An entire ecosystem of software tools has popped up to handle this exact problem. For people just getting started, there are really friendly web-based tools like EasyBids. For the power users who need total control, there's a tool called Hudiconv. And really, under the hood of most of these tools is a workhorse engine called M2 which does the heavy lifting of converting the raw files. Now, many of the more advanced tools use this really powerful idea called a translator file. And here's the genius part. You only have to do the hard thinking once.
The tool scans your messy data and gives you a template. Then you just edit that template one time, basically teaching the program how to translate your lab's weird naming system into the proper bid standard. Once you've done that, you can run it on hundreds, even thousands of subjects, and it all happens automatically.
So, we've done all this careful organizing, right? We've gone through the conversion. What's the big payoff? Because let's be honest, organizing files is nice, but the real goal here is to speed up scientific discovery.
And this is where the magic really happens. Meet the Bids apps. These things are incredible. They're powerful, self-contained software tools that are specifically designed to work on Bids formatted data. So you can grab an app like fMRI Prep, point it at any Bids dataset from anywhere on the planet, and it just works. It knows exactly where to find all the different types of scans and all the metadata it needs. This completely automates what used to be a tedious, error-prone part of the analysis.
So you see, BIDS isn't just about tidy folders. It is the key that unlocks a massive collaborative ecosystem. It creates this amazing positive feedback loop where standardized data leads to standardized tools, which encourages more people to share more standardized data. The entire field of neuroscience gets to move forward together.
And this idea, it's so powerful that it's spreading like wildfire. BIDS started with MRI back in 2016, but it has just exploded to include all sorts of other data types, from EEG and PET scans all the way down to microscopy data. It turns out the basic principles work almost anywhere. Ultimately, this is why BIDS matters so much. By giving everyone a common language to speak, BIDS is building the foundation for a future of science that's more open, where we can all share data easily, more transparent, so we can understand each other's methods, and more reproducible, so we can actually trust the results. And that kind of leads to one last thought to leave you with. This whole thing started in neuroscience, but let's face it, the problem of data chaos is everywhere. So the real question is, what other fields of science are out there, right now, just waiting for their own data revolution?